Hi, and thank you for joining us on another segment of New England Veterans Liberty House, Veterans Serving Veterans. Before I introduce you to my guest, I just want to go ahead and mention a couple of things real quick. First of all, we want to send out a special thank you to Lawrence Community Access Television for everything they've done for me, for NEVLH. We have had the pleasure and the good fortune to be here for a little bit over a year, coming to you once a month, and we couldn't have done that without Jeannie Alexander's assistant, or Jim. So we want to just take this time to personally thank you both very much for this grand opportunity and allowing us to come here once a month and do this show and get out to our veterans and provide them very, very much needed information. Second of all, too, is we're looking for, NEVLH is actually looking for an administrative assistant. So if you know anybody out there that's looking for a part-time job, I ask that you go into our website, send a resume. We're looking for an individual that might be familiar with the nonprofit world, that not preferred, but it will definitely help, and knows the way around an office. So our telephone number is 978-258-2331. Again, that's 978-258-2331. Please feel free to call us, leave us your contact information, and we'll return your call. And also, again, feel free to go onto our website, www.nevlh.org, and submit your resumes. So I'm going to introduce to you my guest, Mr. Bruce McDonald. Right? I didn't butcher your last name, did I?
No, JT, you did it just right.
Fair enough. We're going to talk about a couple things. One is actually one of his babies that he created, is Oxford House. That's actually why we're really here on this segment, is to talk about that. But I'm going to let Bruce get into it a little further. But also, Bruce McDonald is also a part of the board of directors for our organization. And ever since he's come aboard, believe me, it's made my life a lot easier. So thank you for joining us. Thank you for being here. I always like to start off, Bruce, is by talking to veterans that come aboard and talk about their rank, serial number, where they were stationed, what they did for their country, what branch of service. So tell us, what branch of service did you serve in?
I was in the Navy, JT.
Navy.
I got my commission in 1969, in June of 69,
Nice.
through the ROTC program at the University of North Carolina.
Good to go.
And
Good to go.
Came to my first duty station, which happened to be in the Boston Naval Shipyard.
Oh, yeah.
Back in 1969, July of 69.
How was that?
Well, actually, I was born in Boston, even though I grew up
Yeah.
in North Carolina. So you have a choice when you graduate as to, you can either choose a ship type, a duty station, or a or a specialty.
Really?
And I chose a duty station.
Okay.
Which is Newport, actually.
Okay.
Which was the closest home port to Boston.
Right, you're a Boston resident.
But the ship I was assigned to was in a shipyard in
Nice.
Boston, undergoing repairs.
How long were you there for?
Well, actually, only 3 months, because that ship was decommissioned. Never got to sail on it. It was a destroyer leader, a DL. So I was reassigned to another destroyer in Norfolk after 2 months of anti-submarine warfare school.
Really?
Yeah, in Key West, Florida, which was great.
Nice.
Yeah, it was great. In the winter. In the winter.
If you want to get stationed somewhere, you want to get stationed there.
January and February in Key West, Florida.
Outstanding.
Couldn't
That
have
must
timed
have
it
been a
better.
really good time.
It was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And then I arrived in Norfolk, Virginia, in March of 1970.
Okay.
Spent about 3 months on that ship, and that ship was decommissioned.
What's
So
up with you and the
I know.
decommissioning of ships?
So I got in touch with my detailer at the Pentagon and said, at the Navy Department, said, can you get me on something that's going somewhere, a ship that's going to do something.
Yeah.
And that
Not
was
decommissioned 3 months later.
What's that?
Not decommissioned
No,
3
exactly.
months later.
So my third ship was a destroyer out of Norfolk, the USS Steinecker, DD-863, and I was on that ship until I was discharged in March of 1972.
Really? The entire tour was on that ship?
Yeah, about 20 months or so. It was great.
Really?
Yeah, it was great.
Now, what are the odds of that happening, though? Isn't that you're there only usually like 14 months and then you go on?
I don't think that's an unusual length of time for an officer.
Okay.
I can't speak for the enlisted, but for an officer, I don't think that's an unusual length of
Really?
time. Yeah, so it was great. You get to know the ship, the men, the crew. We did a Mediterranean cruise, which was great.
That was going to be my next question.
We did a couple of Caribbean operations.
Nice.
Yeah, so it was nice. Yeah. Yeah.
So what was your MOS? What was actually your job duties?
I was an anti-submarine warfare officer.
Nice.
Which means my division was in charge of the sonar equipment,
Really?
was in charge of the torpedoes and also something called ASROC, which is an anti-submarine rocket launcher.
Okay. Explain a little bit about that.
Well, that contains it contains torpedoes that are rocket mounted. In other words, your deck mounted torpedo tubes can just shoot right off into the water.
Okay.
Like you've seen in the movies.
Right.
But the rocket launch torpedo, they go about 5 miles, I think.
Wow.
Okay, so if you got a sonar contact that's far away, that's what you'd use.
No kidding.
And we also were able to carry, and I think probably enough time has lapsed so I could say this, our nuclear depth charges.
Okay.
And those obviously you would only use in serious circumstances with the approval of the president.
Yeah, exactly.
But the kill radius on a nuclear depth charge back then was about 2,000 yards.
Wow.
So if it went off within 2,000 yards of a submarine,
it's going to destroy anything in its radius path.
Exactly. So
wow.
Those are my responsibilities.
Good to go. Good to go. It sounds like a lot of fun.
Looking back, many years later, it was a good experience.
What? Let me ask you this: why the Navy? Why did you have that passion to join the Navy?
Good question. My father was in the Navy in World War II, and that's the reason. He was a CB. He was a CB.
I have a lot of respect for CBs, and I'll touch on that in a bit.
And I still have his plaque, his wooden plaque that he got when he mustered out. I have his cruise book from one of his duty assignments. Yeah. And that's the reason, man, because he was in the Navy, and so I don't know, I followed in his footsteps.
Follow his footsteps. Nothing wrong with that, man. Nothing wrong with that. But listen, a quick story on CBs. When I first joined the Marine Corps, obviously the Navy and the Marine Corps always has this little thing about it. So, I thought nothing. I was like, Navy, buddy. When I first deployed to Iraq, I was part of Operation Desert Shield, Desert Storm, and we were in Kanjar, I think it was. And so I see these, a bunch of, obviously military men building concrete slabs and building, constructing walls, right? And I'm like, we're in the middle of the desert. What are you guys doing? But obviously, they were preparing it to establish it as a FOB, forward operating base. And every day, I mean, the middle of the day, the sun come up, you're like, it's like 140 degrees. And those guys were out there like banging away. And so I started, getting closer to them and talking to them and find out they were CBs. And from that point on, I had so much respect for those guys because no matter what the elements were outside, those guys were out there, man, and hands and knees and, constructing partition walls, pouring concrete in the middle of the day. So I salute any CBs out there because, trust me, I know how hard the job is.
Well, along that line, my father's last duty station in 1945 was in Attu, Alaska. And if you look at a map of Alaska, Attu is the last of the Aleutian Islands at the very end, okay? Not too far from Russia.
Yeah, I was going to say that.
And their job was to build a runway. They shuttle bombed Japan.
Yeah.
They would take off from Attu, they'd bomb Japan and land in Russia. Wow. They would rearm in Russia, bomb Japan, and land in Attu.
Go figure.
So that was,
that work must have been tough.
Yeah.
Those just the conditions alone, man, just to bear with that.
Right.
I mean, you gotta give, due respect when it comes because they deserved it.
And he was a citizen soldier. He was a civil engineer.
Yeah, good to go. So you know what? Though I was gonna tap you on your shoulder, on your knee. One thing I like about them so much is that we were trading military boots for. They were making us weights out of concrete.
Okay.
So we'd go up to a crew and be like, hey, we need a couple of 20-pounders, 40-pounders. Yep, no problem. What do you got to trade? Next you know, we go back the next day, there's our weight sets, and we trade the boots, take our concrete with us, and start working out. So again, much respect for the CBs. But another thing is, what did you do when you return home? What did you do then?
Came back home in March of 1972. Took the LSAT to go to law school.
Okay.
And did okay on that, and applied to some law schools. Came north to Boston because I decided that I did want to be in this area because it's where I was born, and my brother was up here practicing law. He was a lawyer.
What was your brother practicing?
He was
expertise.
Well, just general practice.
And what's your expertise?
General practice, criminal and civil litigation. So applied to law school, got accepted, went to law school, graduated in 1978, and started my law practice in Cambridge.
Wow.
And
Good to go.
I'm still doing that.
And you're still doing that
Still doing it,
today.
yeah.
But you know what the viewers I want the viewers to know also, Bruce, is that you're involved in so many things. I mean, it's like you have your fingerprints in a lot of things out there, and I know that you're very involved with your community, your church. You give so much of your time to others and expect nothing in return. I think that's one of the reasons I admire and respect you a lot. But tell us a little bit about that as well, please, because I think that's important to know. I know that you've helped recently. One of your endeavors is helping Iraqi families that are returning back. So please tell us a little bit more what you do with the community.
Well, I just, early on in my legal career, I started working with nonprofits. I've been on a lot of nonprofit boards.
And we're lucky to have you, by the way, because he is part of New England Veterans Liberty's board of directors.
I was flattered to be asked, and it's gonna. I'm glad to be with you because I can already see in my short time there it's a great organization.
Yeah, it is. It's getting there.
So I've worked with a lot of nonprofits over the years. Just find that to be gratifying work. I enjoy it. Kind of giving back. I'm also a recovering alcoholic, so that has kind of affected the work I do and the people I work with, and people I try to help.
I think that's one of the main reasons I think that I gravitate a lot to you, is because I'm a recovering alcoholic myself, and so we speak the same language when it comes to that. So congratulations too on your sobriety.
Thank you. It's one day at a time, as we say.
That's it. That's it.
So a lot of my work has been with people either sober in recovery or trying to get sober. You mentioned the Iraqi refugees. That's a more recent endeavor. I've been doing that for the last 4 years, primarily in Lowell, because I live in Billerica, so it's a lot closer than other families that live in the Boston area. And I've just found that to be tremendously gratifying, given the hardship they've gone through, and you've seen it firsthand.
Sure, I've been there. Not everybody in Iraq is bad people.
No. These are people that have fled the country. Many of them have fled because their lives were in danger because they helped the U.S. troops, either translators or whatever.
Very true.
And they've come here as refugees. They have legal status. They can work. Many of them have already gotten their green cards, and some have become citizens.
Good to go.
Yeah, and so any help I can give them, it's just hopefully it makes your life a little easier.
Profoundly rewarding. It's
very rewarding.
It is,
and it's been a lot of fun too.
And I want the viewers real quick, and I'm sorry, I want the viewers to understand that the Iraqi refugees that are coming to this country, again, we mentioned the word Iraqi or Afghanistan's, and like, oh my God, you're helping the enemy.
Right.
But it's not so. We have, I know when I was there, just like you mentioned, we became really good friends with a gentleman named Fareed, and he was our translator. And what happens out there is that if you go outside the base and say the tribes find out that you have been assisting the U.S., your life is in jeopardy. Because they consider you a traitor or whatnot. And a lot of them, just really mean well and just want better for their country. I know the gentleman that I worked with, that's what he wanted. He wanted to work for us, but I think in general, he just wanted to help us better his country. And a lot of them get penalized for that. So I just wanted you all to understand that, that the families that he is helping, it's families because they had no choice but to leave, because if not, obviously, something catastrophic would have happened. So,
and as you know, a lot of these families have heartbreaking stories about relatives being killed, brothers. Heartbreaking stories.
Families being torn apart.
Exactly.
Stuff like that.
So my experience has been, and I think it's pretty representative of other friends of mine who work with the Iraqis, that they're hardworking, they're conscientious, they want to learn English, they want a better life for themselves and their children. It's great to see these young kids coming along, learning English, going to school.
Well, you're dealing with a couple now, right?
I am.
How many kids that come over with their with the families? How many kids in general?
I work closely with a family that has 3 teenagers. All go to Lowell High School.
How are they adjusting?
Good.
Yeah.
They're learning the language. I remember sometimes I teach them some slang, because I say if you learn the slang, you'll really fit in. Like calling a Chevrolet a Chevy. I say you call a Chevrolet a Chevy, and you'll really fit in.
You're good. You're good. And so how's it been for them though, transitioning over to the actual American culture? How they're dealing with that?
Pretty good. The biggest problem that they have is getting a job.
Is it because of the language barrier, or just because of their ethnic background? Or?
Not as much the language barrier. It's just that it's tough for a lot of Americans to find jobs.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
you hit that one on the nail. Yeah. Right now, getting a job is really, really tough out here. The economy is not stabilizing the way we thought it was.
You find it's not unusual to see engineers, doctors, professionals, pumping gas, or working in a 7-Eleven.
It's unfortunate to say, but
they do it because they know they have to do it, and that there'll be a better life if they just keep plugging.
Yeah, they keep plugging away. It should get better. You keep doing what you're doing, and hopefully something down the road will come and be better. But yeah, it's tough. It's tough in general. So listen, one of the main reasons we're here is because we wanted to talk about the Oxford House. And I know that, in my personal view, Oxford House offers so many benefits. And I personally visited the Oxford House in Hooper Street. Is it?
Hooper Street in Chelsea.
Yeah, Hooper Street in Chelsea. And I put eyes firsthand, and I'm going to tell you, the minute I went in there, I was amazed. Not just the floor design, but how, first of all, it's self-governed, right? And that's a model that, believe it or not, when we got our apartments here at New England Veterans Liberty House, I modeled off of that because we talked about that for a bit, and it's sober housing, self-governing, which makes so much sense instead of having an organization there every day telling them what to do.
Exactly.
So, talk to me a little bit about your brainchild, because I know that was you, and I'm sure some of your friends. But talk to me a little bit about Oxford. How did it come about? Why? I mean, what were you doing? You're sitting in one location, and all of a sudden you're like, I want to do this.
Sure.
Talk to me about that.
I will. I'm glad to, and thank you. First of all, let me thank you for coming to the house, because it's a real boost for the residents when someone comes and says the things you said to them about their house. It's a real boost for them.
I was honored. I was honored. I didn't want to leave, but I had other stuff to do. But
we hope you come back.
Oh, definitely, most definitely.
Oxford House. Well, back in 1989, I had a client who, a criminal client who was sentenced by the court. And one of the things the judge wanted him to do was to get into a halfway house. And was this client a veteran or non-veteran? Non-veteran.
Non-veteran. Okay.
So I started looking around for a halfway house for him to try to help him out. I couldn't find one. They all had waiting lists, long waiting lists. And so I just thought to myself, well, I'm wondering how much trouble it would be to start a halfway house, start a nonprofit and start a halfway house. And I came up to Lowell House, and met with someone who I knew, and she basically said, Bruce, you don't want to start a halfay house. I mean, just the work involved, the regulation involved, the bureaucracy involved. She said, but I got some mailing recently from something called Oxford House that seemed really interesting. You might want to check that out. And she gave me some material.
Okay.
And I went home and read it, and I think within a day or two, I called their headquarters down in Silver Spring, Maryland, and spoke to Paul Malloy, who was one of the co-founders of Oxford House.
Okay.
And I said, I can't believe that this works with the residents running it themselves. He said, Bruce, it does.
Really?
And we spent about an hour talking about it.
Why'd you have that doubt? Why did you think it?
Because being a criminal lawyer and having seen some houses where residents, were in early recovery, and just knowing kind of, frankly, the scams that some people in the criminal justice system can pull.
Yep.
I just thought it would be chaos.
Yeah.
And I'm also being more familiar with the house manager model, or the sober house, or the halfway house model, where you have an on-site manager.
Yeah. To oversee
things,
all the essential needs and day-to-day operations.
Yeah, to make sure there are no problems.
Sure. Keep everybody on check.
I just couldn't see it happening, but Paul assured me that it could, and within a month or so, I was looking for a house to rent. To start an Oxford House, to start the first Oxford House in Massachusetts.
Under their umbrella.
Under their umbrella, because what happens is Oxford House, they don't own houses. They simply, someone rents a house, starts an Oxford House, and it could be the residents themselves that go out and find it. In the case of the first house that I started
in Massachusetts.
In Massachusetts, it was the first Oxford House in Massachusetts. It was the 27th Oxford House in the country, I think. They only had 26 at that time, and we were the 27th. So I found this house, but sometimes the residents find it. They find it themselves, which is great.
And it has happened in other states that residents find it.
Absolutely.
Really?
So
that's interesting.
So I found the first house with a friend of mine, and convinced the landlord to rent to a group of residents. In this case, it was 8 residents. And she did. She took that.
And that's Cooper, right? Hooper.
No, this was another one? This was the house in Malden back in 1989.
Oh, okay.
Many
So I'm
years
getting
ago.
confused. Okay.
This is many years ago. This is
Okay.
the first one I got involved with. And that landlord, God bless her, took a leap of faith and said, no, I'll rent to you guys.
Really?
And that's the house, and that was the first Oxford house in Massachusetts.
Wow.
And from then, I did a second one, a third one, a fourth one, got involved with a lot more in the state, just got involved with sober housing generally a lot more.
But I know you mentioned it's a sober house, but it's self-governed and whatnot,
Right.
but they had a board of directors in place as well, overseeing a lot of the...
Well, Oxford House National, that's a nonprofit corporation down in Maryland, Silver Spring, Maryland. What they do is they help you start a house, and then they charter you. They give you a charter,
Gotcha.
which you put on your wall,
Yep.
and it says you're a chartered Oxford House.
Understood.
Now, many years later, and the first Oxford House started in 1975, and when I helped start the first one in Massachusetts, there were 27 in the country. Now there are over 1,700 in the country.
Wow.
Okay, and you can go on their website, oxfordhouse.org, and you can click on their list of
Yeah,
houses.
please, let them know again.
Oxford House.
Because
oxfordhouse.org, and you'll see their story, you'll see their houses, and you'll click on a state and find out what houses they have in every state in the country. And it's really taken off, and it's quite
how many
the model.
houses in Massachusetts then? 1,700.
Yeah, they're not. They're about. I'd say probably they're maybe 6 or 8 in Massachusetts.
Okay.
Didn't take off here as fast as it has in other states. I'd like to change that if I had the time.
Yeah,
but,
sure. You're spread out thin as it
Yeah,
is right now.
I am spread pretty thin. But it's as you suggested earlier, it's a self-governing model. There are 3 basic principles to Oxford House. One, it's self-governing. The residents make all the decisions in the house. There are no house managers.
Yeah.
No one tells them what to do.
Yeah. They do meet.
They have
periodically.
weekly house
Yeah.
meetings, and they vote on things. They vote who gets accepted to the house. They vote who gets expelled from the house. They vote on, do we buy a new refrigerator? They vote on everything.
Yeah. Do they have a little fund or something that they have money that they put away monthly on themselves, or is that money coming from the actual organization itself?
No. The only connection with Oxford House National is basically their charter, and Oxford House National can provide technical support if they're having a problem, or they.
So how are they paying for the the repairs and the refrigerators, or rent,
Sure.
all that stuff?
Keep in mind that they all lease the properties. They don't own them. The residents don't own the properties. They lease them. So the biggest expense is the rent. Okay, but you're right. They have utility payments.
Yeah.
They've got house supplies.
Food,
Coffee.
yeah.
Not so much food, but house supplies, cleaning supplies. And what they do is they pay a weekly house share, what's called a house share.
Oh, cool.
And that house share, when you aggregate all of the residents' house share, that's enough to pay the rent, utilities, cleaning supplies, coffee, sugar, things that are common to the house.
Good. Good.
Each
And is
resident
that on a weekly basis or a monthly basis?
It's usually a weekly basis, but a house can vote to do it monthly instead. Those house shares, when they're aggregated, are enough to pay all their expenses, including
the
rent,
overhead.
and have a little bit set aside to build up some money in reserve.
Makes sense.
Okay?
Makes sense.
And that's why it's self-supporting.
Yeah.
There are no grants. They don't look for outside help. There's no grants. They pay their own way.
Yeah,
That's their
it's
buy-in. That's their
self-supporting,
buy-in to the house. Okay?
Good.
That's
Yeah.
the first principle.
Which is good.
The second
it
one
gives them a little bit more of that sense of pride too.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Yeah.
The second one is well, actually that is the second one, self-supporting, that they pay their own way. So we have self-governing, self-supporting, and the third one, which is critical, is they have to be sober.
Correct.
No alcohol or drugs.
Zero tolerance.
Zero tolerance.
Good.
You relapse, you're out. You're out. There's no probation. That sounds pretty harsh. People think that's pretty harsh.
Yeah.
But
I was just gonna ask if someone slips, again, I'm a recovering alcoholic, but I haven't picked up a drink, thank God. But I know I had days where I've crossed the liquor store many times and decided to walk away from it. But how about those that just slip, like say one day, go up there and have a drink,
Right.
and then go to the house? What happens to individuals?
Well,
like that?
early on in Oxford House's history, they were confronted with that.
Okay.
And I think, if memory serves, they did allow someone to stay who'd slipped. And it turned out to be a disaster, okay? The thought is that yes, it sounds harsh, But if the residents who are
works.
living there know those are the rules,
It works.
They know they have a safe place to live.
Correct.
Okay.
Safe and stable environment.
Exactly. And also, anyone who comes into the house comes in it with their eyes wide open. On the application, it says, if I relapse, I'm out.
Yeah.
So that, for me, is a quality model because there are no doubts about what the rules are.
Yeah, the message is conveyed, and it's conveyed properly.
And if you have a situation where you can allow someone to have probation or to come back to the house, then where do you draw the line?
Sure.
You know, is one drink?
Yeah, you're going to start getting into gray areas, you know.
Or
after
you
that.
might start getting into, you've heard the expression, principles before personalities.
Yeah.
So we like Joe, so we'll let him come back. We don't like Jim, so he's out.
He's out.
And that just could be
Creates
the
tension.
beginning of the end of the house.
Yeah, no,
you know?
I agree. I agree. I just asked because I'm sure there's individuals out there that have slipped up in a sober home. I'm with you though. I'm with you. The same thing in our apartments. We have a zero tolerance for alcohol and drugs and a zero tolerance on racism. So if you slip up, it's time for you to go into a detox, or it's time for you to go into a 30-day sober program. Or, when you sober up for 90 days, come and talk to me again. I'm willing to help, anybody out, but you're not going to do it while you're in the house. Bruce, I don't have much time.
Okay.
Yeah, so we're going to go ahead and sign off here in a bit, but I want to thank you for being here. I know that we're going to go ahead and do this again, but thank you for taking the time.
It's been a pleasure.
Thank
Thanks
you
for
for
asking me,
talking a
JT.
little bit. We were going to talk about Oxford House a little more, but maybe in the next segment we could extend that conversation about the funding and what you're trying to do for Oxford House, what we did when we got there, what we saw, what needs improvement, the help that we need from all individuals out there. So with that said, thank you very much.
It's been a real pleasure. Thanks for asking me.
It's a pleasure for being here. And like I always say before I leave any show, any segment, go out there and try to make a difference in somebody's life today. Thank you, and we'll see you next time.